republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Father, we come to you tonight. We ask for your guidance in making the correct decisions for the citizens. We ask you to look over our armed forces as they protect us. Amen.
Thanks, Morris. Roll call.
Carter.
Yeah.
Venable.
Here.
Dorman. Stock.
Here.
Young.
Here.
Meadows.
Here.
Bozarth.
Here.
Hurt.
We do have a quorum. Hearing of citizens' comments. If you'd like to make a comment, please come forward, identify yourself, and you have 5 minutes.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the council. My name is Brad Woldridge. I'm in Ward 1. I didn't know if I was going to get a chance to speak later this evening, so I wanted to go ahead and address this in public comments. At 4 o'clock this afternoon, I discovered that today's agenda included proposed street closures and parking restrictions for Heritage Days. I'm sure in your packet there's detailed information about the proposed closures. I operate WJ's Restaurant at the corner of Chestnut and 6th Street. We had this issue last year. We tried to compromise, and the compromise didn't work. I have some extreme concerns about the proposed street closures because they are identical to the ones that were last year that then we tried to amend. And then in addition, the goal was to bring the beer garden back down to the parking lot directly across from WJ's. I think the most concerning part of all of that is the fact that the area that talks about WJ's and closing 6th Street between Chestnut and Spring says WJ's, no signature, refused. No one contacted me. No one. I represent companies that operate or own 328 6th Street, 414 6th Street, 418 6th Street, the entire green space on the corner of 6th and Chestnut, all the way up to Main Street, and no one approached me whatsoever. My concern, if I may approach, I said we tried this last year. Those are photographs that I took last year when we made an effort to try to amend these parking restrictions. And as you'll see, 6th Street basically became a parking zone, loading and unloading zone for the carnival the entire week. Their proposed closures are effective Tuesday night. My restaurant's open Wednesday through Saturday nights for the entire week. There's carnival coming and going. One of the requests is to run water, city water and city electricity to the carnival. That's going to affect the fire hydrant on the southwest corner of 6th and Chestnut, which means it's crossing Chestnut. Literally, there's almost no way of ingress and egress to access our restaurant. We tried to push the parking restrictions a little farther north last year. As you'll see, they continue to get pushed further back down so that to the point that there was absolutely no parking. I went through this, and I'll keep this brief, but all of the other proposed parking restrictions still have a negative effect on our business. 6th Street from Spring down to the alley where the fire station number 2 is. That's the only other way of ingress and egress to access the restaurant. Chestnut Street from Main down to 6th is proposed to be completely closed for the carnival this year. Last year we had decided we were going to try to open it up so we could at least have a pass-through. Again, it still had carnival equipment on it. The blockades that are proposed basically completely landlock our restaurant on the busiest weekend of the year. Let's see, I talked about the water. We tried to compromise last year. The pictures will show you where the dumpster was. That dumpster was directly in front of my restaurant. And you'll see that orange debris that's on the ground. That's just grease. I mean, we had kids coming and going, all just throwing trash in the front yard and deciding to move their dumpster. I followed the appropriate protocol. I called it in, and I was told basically the dumpster's not moving. I expressed concerns about where the box trucks were parking and where there were some fifth wheel trailers and some gooseneck trailers. And I said, we're not going to move them anymore, or we'll move them this much, and it was 5 feet. Again, going back to the beginning, I'll finish up. The fact that there's a proposal in the street closures that's before the council tonight that says that I refuse service or refuse a signature is absolutely not true. No one spoke to me. Someone did speak to me in 2018. That's why I appeared before the council. We tried to compromise. No one said a word to me this year. And again, the other concern is this starts Tuesday night and runs through the weekend. I guess I'll just finish up by saying that in all due respect, I want the council to look at this objectively, take my particular business out of it. There is no other business that could be any more adversely affected with this proposed street closure than a restaurant on the busiest weekend of the year at that location. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brad. Anybody else? Approval of the minutes of the April 15th, 2019 council meeting. Any changes, corrections, or deletions? They will stand as submitted. Consent items. Consider pay request number 2 from Earthworks Excavation and Associates, LLC, in the amount of $16,468.10 for Rice Mueller stormwater improvements. Item B, consider change order number 2 from Earthworks Excavation and Associates, LLC, in the amount of $4,125, credit for Rice Mueller stormwater improvements.
Mayor, make a motion to be approved.
Thank you, Morris. Second? Susan, thank you. I have a motion and a second. Questions? Comments? Roll call.
Carter,
Yes.
Venable,
Yes.
Stock,
Yes.
Young,
Yes.
Meadows,
Yes.
Bozarth,
Yes.
Presentation of the council claims, page 11.
ordinance appropriating money. Be it ordained by the council of the city of Boonville as follows. Section 1, for the purpose of paying salaries and various accounts against the city of Boonville, which have been allowed by the council at the regular meeting thereof on May 6, 2019, the sum of $1,387,387.44. General fund, $138,739.42. Sanitation, $31,860.47. CIP tax, $16,386.40. Waterworks, $120,098.88. Capital projects, $10,027.77. Wastewater, $66,649.11. Tourism, $5,209.30. Gaming, $72,491.09. Parks and Water, $925,925 even. Section 2, the accountant is hereby authorized and instructed to draw checks on the respective city bank accounts in favor of the persons whose salaries and accounts have been allowed as above, amounting to $1,387,387.44, being the total amount of money above appropriated. Section 3, this ordinance shall take effect and be enforced from and after its passage. First reading on May 6, 2019. Read for the second time this 6th day of May, 2019, since a copy was made available prior to the meeting.
Second reading, title only.
Ordinance appropriating money.
Mayor, make a motion this be approved.
Thank you, Morris. Is there a second? Mike? Questions or comments? Roll call.
Carter,
Yes.
Venable,
Yes.
Stock,
Yes.
Young,
Yes.
Meadows,
Yes.
Bozarth.
Yes.
Unfinished business. Item A, second reading of bill number 2019-014, vacating an unimproved street in Hazel Lane addition.
An ordinance of the city of Boonville, Missouri, vacating an unimproved street platted in the Hazel Lane addition.
Mary Lynn Agnew and Adam Banks is a,
Just a minute, Emma. We need a motion and a
I'm
second
sorry.
before we
Make a
can
motion to
discuss.
approve.
Okay, thank you, Morris. Whitney, thank you. All right, we have a motion and second. Okay, yeah, well, thank you.
Mary Lynn Agnew and Adam Banks has purchased a property that was previously or currently known as Hazel Lane Development that is roughly located parallel to 6th Street and Jefferson Drive off the east end of South Street. In 1947, when that piece of property was platted, a street was platted through the middle of that and dedicated a street right-of-way to the city. Ms. Agnew and Mr. Banks have no intention of developing that property or completing that street. Access to their property will be from an additional piece of property they purchased fronting Jefferson Drive. In fact, they're going to build a house generally in the center of that piece of property, which would be in the middle of the cul-de-sac for that street. Planning and Zoning has reviewed it and recommended vacation. And Ms. Agnew and Mr. Banks are here if you have any questions for them.
Thank you, Emil. Good summary. Any questions from the council? We have a motion and a second. Roll call.
Carter,
Yes.
Venable,
Yes.
Stock,
Yes.
Young,
Yes.
Meadows,
Yes.
Bozarth.
Yes.
Just as a, once we finish off the ordinance, the city clerk and I will have that recorded and move forward with that.
Thank you. Okay, we're playing again. Item B, consider purchase of mini excavator for street department. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second, Whitney? Any questions or comments? Brett, I think we have all the information you requested.
Yeah, we went from nothing to overkill. That was real nice, but that's fine. Yeah, it looks fine.
It looks good, okay.
Yeah.
Good. Anybody else, Morris?
Why, on the last few years, we've been leasing equipment. Why have we decided to purchase this instead of leasing it?
Good question. ML?
Well, I guess it depends on the piece of equipment. Generally speaking, and of course they're each different, some of the leased pieces of equipment are quite simply too expensive to purchase, and they are used so much that we don't necessarily want to burden ourselves with the ongoing maintenance at some point for that piece of equipment. So we have a leased skid loader. The skid loaders are changed out, and I don't have that information with me, but the skid loaders as part of that lease are changed out after a set number of hours before we would be burdened with some maintenance and repairs. Some of the other pieces of equipment, like one of the track hose, is just simply too expensive.
I mean, would we save on maintenance though, since we could trade it out before it got wore out?
Well, not necessarily, because I guess you have to find where that line is. If we're trading it out, which is the same as the lease, and I don't know that you necessarily, if you trade something frequently or too frequently, I don't know that you necessarily can be sure that you're going to recover your money or your losses. In the case of this piece of equipment, it is inexpensive enough. It is something that we can purchase.
Did you check in on the lease, see how much it would cost to lease one?
Not this. We rent these frequently enough.
Morris, as to this piece of equipment, we bought one of these, a slightly smaller version, about 2 years ago.
2 years ago.
First time we ever had the piece of equipment. So frankly, we don't have enough experience with our usage patterns over a long period of time to know whether you want to lease it or you want to own it.
Okay.
Right now, we're going to say we're going to own it.
Yeah.
Like we own the bulldozer.
Right.
It has a high dollar amount, but we don't use it intensively, so it'll last us 15 or 20 years. The skid loader, the backhoes, we use them virtually every day, and after about 2 or 3 years, I don't want to own them anymore. It's not only the maintenance cost, what you find in our little world is dependability. Because if them things break down, they always break down like today when the sun was out. And then it takes you a week to get them fixed, and then the next week it rains, and you pissed away 2 weeks of productivity because your equipment isn't up to speed. So that's my thoughts on it. So.
We will be careful how we quote you.
Okay. That's what you get the feeling, because you're sitting there and saying, you know, it's nice, and we got no equipment. So,
Anything else, Morris? No? Anybody else? Roll call?
Carter,
Yes.
Venable,
Yes.
Stock,
Yes.
Young,
Yes.
Meadows,
Yes.
Ozark.
Yes.
All right, thank you. New business. First reading of bill number 2019-015, amending the budget for fiscal year 2019-2020.
An ordinance of the City of Boonville, Missouri, amending the budget for the period April 1st, 2019 through March 31st, 2020.
We are going to move item B in new business to the next meeting. And I would request that the chamber and Mr. Woldridge get together and solve this situation, please. Reports of standing committees. B and Z.
The minutes are in the packet, so if you have any questions, let me know.
Page 50 to 52. 50 and,
Yeah, we're busy over there these days.
yeah, that's a good thing. Housing Authority. Morris?
Minutes are in your packet, good meeting and moving forward.
Board of Public Works.
That
Yeah.
meeting was canceled.
Canceled. IDA.
That meeting was also canceled.
MFA.
Canceled also.
Street, alley, and sanitation.
I was actually out of town that meeting, but the minutes are in the packet, sir.
They are. Thanks for having the discussion. Any questions? None. Reports of city officials. City administrator.
The annual street inspection list is enclosed. I'm not gonna go over that item by item. Obviously, you'll find a section that we'll have some bids on in the next 30 or 60 days on chip and seal and slurry seal and some curb repair and perhaps another element. And then a lot of that we'll endeavor to do ourselves. So that's all I have.
Okay, I think one of the things that's important about this street list is to make sure that you understand what's happening in your particular area. The wards sometimes, you know, your folks will give you a call, particularly if you've got cracked curbs or potholes or what have you, which we have. So thank you all for doing that so that everybody has the good information. I have, on page 64, we have some committee appointments to affirm. Marilyn Atkins to Boonville Housing Authority, David Smith, John Pasley, and Wayne Jones to Street, Alley, and Sanitation Board. Do we have a motion to approve those?
I'll make a motion with approval.
Thank you, Morris. Thank you, Mike. Any questions? Roll call.
Hurt. Pardon me, Carter,
Here.
Venable,
Yes.
Stock,
Yes.
Young,
Yes.
Meadows,
Yes.
Ozark.
Yes.
It's all good, I'm fine.
You never make a mistake. That's a first. We need to put that on the calendar. Wow.
Put it in the minutes.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll leave
The
that part out.
the only difficulty there is she does the minutes, right? I wanna make a note to make sure that everybody will take the time to review the public water system report. One of the most important things that we do from an infrastructure standpoint is make sure that we've got good water and safe water for all of our citizens. City clerk,
I have nothing this evening, thank you.
miscellaneous, Kate?
Yeah, I wanna go back to page 2, if you guys don't mind. And for those of you who were here for Mr. Vietz's presentation last week also, he echoed many of the same sentiments, that Eric talked about I will say, one thing he noted in response to some of Bobby's concerns too, that the way they crafted this legislation, they made it a little bit easier to access medical marijuana than in some of the other states, because you just have to have a diagnosis, you don't have to have a referral or a prescription. So, I don't wanna bog down in the enforcement side of this discussion, but I do wanna say that, and Mr. Viets was very clear that that was their intention, they wanted to make it more accessible for people who would use it and not have people who couldn't have a doctor that would write a prescription, so. I think, anything else from Mr. Viets' presentation?
No, it was good.
It was good. There you go.
He did mention that 1,000 foot or whatever was just put in to try to get it passed.
Boats, yeah, to get
You know,
boats.
like he kinda wished,
That he had
Wish he
shortened
had-
it, yeah. He did say that.
but it was just so the public didn't just jump on that there was no restriction, so.
That was interesting, I was there, but you and I discussed that. That's why I was, and I thank you a lot for how you helped with that. I'm very interested in the danger. It's one of the things that we don't want to assume the authority and therefore the liability if there's a danger.
So to go back to page 2, I guess I would just start with that as staff, we pretty much already provided some recommended zoning classifications. Get way back in there. Trying to not walk people off.
Or you can have this.
No, it's all right. I don't want to feel like Vanna. We recommended some zoning classifications. They're basically, as we already said, what would be sort of similar to what's already in our zoning ordinances. The only thing that we kind of called out, again, I don't think that outdoor growing is likely to occur, but I think that was the one thing that gave some of us the biggest pause, because we just thought it was interesting and a little bit interesting in terms of enforcement and safety. So we kept that in an RA, which is really, there aren't very many zones there, but then anything indoor we put into a C2, or like they said, light industrial, light commercial. And then for marijuana infused products, or now they're calling it manufacturing, infusion, whatever name they call it, same thing, that would be a C2, and it already allows candy, nut and confectionery, manufacturing, dairy, food products, so all those things are similar to that sort of concept of that. The testing facility, we don't have anything. I don't know that we would have a testing facility either. But we just, in terms of consistency, thought it probably would be fine in a C2 also. And then a dispensary we put it as a C1, and that would be similar to any other goods or products at retail, including a pharmacy. So that's our recommendation for where they belong in terms of what we already have. If there's consensus between you guys, then that's what we'll amend into the ordinance codes, and we will specifically call out medical marijuana, and then what the activity is in the codes. Does that seem agreeable? Does anyone have heartburn on either side here?
Sounds wonderful.
So, the next question is, if you wanted to do anything with a special use permit by ordinance, we do have that currently in our codes. It's for an adult business, is the one where we call out a special use permit, and then we would craft whatever that special use permit looks like. But if that was something you guys wanted to do, then a potential cultivator would come before city council, or it would start by planning and zoning, and just like a site plan, they would present basically a site plan for review and approval at the commission level and the planning and zoning level. At the time, when Eric was at the planning and zoning meeting, he did think that there might be some value to that in terms of a weighing of a application at the state level, so he didn't seem to balk at that. And when we were reviewing what other cities have done, frankly, there's the gamut. So, but a lot of people do have special use permits, but they also maybe have special use permits for a lot more too.
Kate, didn't he say with the amount of remodel, and say electrical needs within a facility, it would have to come before planning and zoning anyway, so we probably did
I
not
think it would
need.
just have to get a building permit, but that doesn't come through planning and zoning, right? Am I correct in that?
Yeah, that'd just be a plan.
That would just
So
be
it
an
would just be
internal
where-
staff.
So I remember there was something, so somebody's eyes could look it over.
Yeah, I do a plan review on it, so.
Okay.
Whitney, I didn't quite get, where were you driving?
Well, I was, where the special use permit is just for us to take a look at it, when I was saying that somebody was gonna be able to look at it either way. Where it would be, Steve being able to take a look at what the plans were. I just don't see a special use permit being needed, just the rules and the processes they have to go through to do it. I don't see it as any different than any other business.
So essentially what you're saying is that it wouldn't even need to go before P and Z?
No, not if it fits in these categories, no.
And not if it's a new building, I should say too, that would of course come to planning and zoning, but if it's just like a retrofit of Mr.
Yeah.
Martin's building, then it would not. It would come to,
Yeah.
I think is what Whitney's getting at is at a certain point in time, somebody on the city staff would be taking a look at it, which that chain would start with me. Because they're gonna have to come in, any type of remodel that they do on this building to get it up and going, they're going to have to submit a permit application to me along with a set of drawings. And then with that set of drawings, I'm gonna do a full plan review on it, so I think that's where Whitney's going. If I'm doing a plan review on it, then does it need to go any farther than just me? As far as going on to planning and zoning and on to city council for approval.
it requires corridor standards.
Right, so you,
No, not for remodels.
I'm not sure they want those plans out. Okay, so the four things that are listed on here, we got cultivation, infusion, testing, and dispensary, right? The only one that's not covered under our current, do I get to finish the question first? Okay. The only one that's not currently covered, is the testing.
I would clarify to say that it is the only one that doesn't have a similar activity already listed, but no matter what, we will add these into the zoning definitions. So we will bring an ordinance to you that adds to the C2 acceptable activity is these things. There's nothing similar to medical marijuana testing in our ordinances currently.
So with that, like in the C, what we would currently allow in a C2 zone, we would just add to that, marijuana manufacturing facility, marijuana testing facility, things such as that could be added to that.
It's similar, if you were on the council, we did the same thing with CMMG.
Yes.
If you remember, we had to add their specific activity.
Right, but CMMG didn't have to go before P and Z?
No.
And what the suggestion here, is Whitney's suggestion, is that we don't have to go in front of.
Yeah.
Correct.
It's just another business coming to town.
Yeah, and
So
the only thing, I think the only time, Ned, that we would require, coming to P and Z and council approval, if somebody was building a brand-new facility. Then we would have the site plan review, the site plan approval by planning and zoning, and then it would go on to you guys for council approval, just like we would any other new development, as long as it was a new development. In this instance, we're talking about existing facilities, that all they're going to be doing is remodeling, to get them up to what they need to manufacture out of it.
So as it stands, we don't have any reason for this to go in front of P and Z.
No,
is what
the
we're
only,
saying.
yeah, the only
Unless
reason
we-
would
unless
be if we
decide to.
called it out in a special use permit, cause then it sets aside a special process by which it's approved. But if you just put it in the zoning ordinances, then there isn't any, it's just assumed like everything else, and it would run what's already currently in our ordinances.
Does anybody else confused? Steve, go ahead, maybe you can help me.
This is gonna be more confusing. I'm wondering if we can even see the plans, if the state's gonna oversee those plans, they may not want those plans anywhere.
I'd say if they're gonna wanna set up in Boonville, somebody's gonna see them.
Yeah.
They're gonna have to be electric.
Well, yeah.
I think they're gonna have to share their plans, cause there's also, on an unrelated note,
Yeah.
discussions about the public safety side and
Right.
what that looks like, so.
I would lock them up.
We still reserve that right in our ordinances, that if somebody starts a project without a permit, we can't shut them down. So if they wanna proceed with that project, they'll come to us one way or the other, so. Yeah.
I'm glad I got a permit.
We're canceling it.
Council, are you comfortable with that process of it
Yeah.
going through Steve? Is that what you're comfortable with? I think that takes care of the special use, doesn't it?
Okay, so then the next question is,
Can I add something about the special use? The only thing that I'm concerned about as far as the special use permit.
Speak, come on up to the,
Yeah,
to
the only thing I'm concerned
doohickey.
about, any part of the special use permit would be for the retail side of it. Because,
Dispensary,
yeah,
I think they call
dispensaries,
it.
because one thing I do worry about, and it did happen in Colorado, a couple other places, is the people that had the medical licenses were grandfathered for a retail license for the recreational use. And I don't want that to all of a sudden, they go, okay, now recreational is passed. Those of you that already have that license now can do recreational also. And we got rid of that special use permit for that. I would like to see the retail side of it, something done there where we can at least keep our thumb on it a little bit.
Didn't they cover that though with being strictly, this is for medical?
But they can, the state can turn around, write that.
But
and
that's
say-
not our ordinance, ours is medical.
Right.
So we
but
can
we
say,
would be
we,
super.
But we super, yeah, but the state can go in and say, okay, we're grandfathering that for legalized recreational marijuana. And these people are already qualified, cause that's what they'll say, we're already qualified, we went through all this already. So we should be the only ones that get to sell it to the public. Then you've got a wide open retail going on in the old medical retail establishment. I don't wanna see that happen.
Is there anything in the state's rules, you know, like this 1,000-foot rule, that we have to handle? Do we handle that through P and Z, or do we handle that through council?
No, so the 1,000-foot rule is whatever you write into ordinance. And so then how that would occur is when they would come to Steve or to the city to get a business license, it would be triggered just like if someone's coming to get a liquor license. So let's say it was a 300-foot rule. Steve's gonna say, oh, it's a 300-foot rule, and he's gonna look and see if there's a church or a school. And if there's not, then it doesn't go any further, and then if there is, there's a process by which they would have to get it.
Okay, so I'm getting confused again.
That's the thing
Do
I'm-
we need to do an ordinance to approve this business coming into town?
No,
Then how do we cover the 1,000-foot deal?
because what we're gonna do is we're gonna,
Amend the zoning ordinance.
we're gonna
You don't
amend
put
the
a number
zoning
in
ordinance.
there Unless you want it to be 0 and then it's silent.
Okay.
You're gonna amend the zoning
How
ordinance.
did I miss that?
well, and
That's
we,
what Alvise said, they see too, we're gonna write these words into the zoning in the book, and then Steve's gonna use that to work when somebody comes to town.
All right, so this,
and I'll have to ask Doug if we need to specifically call out if we have a 0 setback since it's already set in
Right,
statute. I think we may need to have an ordinance that's or included
To be explicit.
to be explicit, because the state would technically supersede. So we'll call that out. So there is a decision to be made that will go into an ordinance, but it doesn't keep coming back for review. Once you make the decision, it's done.
okay, so if we don't do the special use thing, and we can do an ordinance that clarifies whatever we want clarified on this
Yes.
Right, so
particular issue.
the two things
Thank
that
you,
would,
Brad. That helps too. Maybe I'm getting it here.
the two things that then you guys could put in your ordinance is whatever setback, and then if you want to limit the hours of operation.
All right, so we got setback. What's the number for setback, council?
As far as manufacturing, mine is none. I mean, it's a manufacturing process like any other if it's in that zone, you're in.
Do we have setback on anything else?
Alcohol.
Any other kind of business?
Alcohol.
Alcohol retail.
And what's the setback on that?
100 feet.
100 foot? least equal to alcohol,
Yeah.
shouldn't it?
I think as far as for retail, absolutely.
For
Okay.
I'm not manufacturing or testing or cultivation, but retail, yes, I think it should be the same as alcohol.
All right, anything else that we need to cover?
So if I understand you, you're just saying that, so cultivation, infusion, and testing would be 0, no setback, and a dispensary facility would be 100 feet.
Sounds good.
Council?
Easy. Okay.
Matt, all
I
right,
think that's what I'm hearing, yes.
okay, then on your comment about the dispensaries, what, do we need to do any kind of language to cover what you wanted to see there? That
I
we
think
wanted to make sure we run that through?
Well, I'm not quite sure how we put that language in there, if it's even possible, that if it is voted on statewide to go with full recreational marijuana, that these places aren't grandfathered in. Because if we all of a sudden go with the recreational use of marijuana, that's a whole other traffic pattern than just the medical marijuana.
Yes.
And I don't want them being grandfathered in.
Okay,
We
so
can- we can-
that's gotta be done by the state though, or
I,
can we do it?
no, I'm worried about the
locally?
state coming in and saying, we've already done all the checking those guys out, so they're good to go, and all of a sudden they just change their flags from medical to
Okay,
We'll
free
address
for all.
that
I don't want them to.
It's gonna come back.
all right, so we have Doug do the language for that?
We'll have to, yeah, I can't craft that.
Okay.
You understand what I'm saying?
I understand what you're saying, but yeah, I don't know what the verbiage,
And personally, I think it
appropriate
should be an
verbiage.
8 to 5 Monday through Saturday deal. I don't think it should be 24 hours a day. Come on in and buy your,
On the dispensary.
yeah, 8 to 5.
So are we saying no recreational dispensary later?
Well, no, we're not saying anything. We're just saying that
Just because
should
they
in the
have
future recreational marijuana become available in Missouri, that we would wanna craft our own rules specific to that
Right, they
activity.
can't just change the shingle that says medical.
Right, right, I
Yeah.
understand
Full-blown
that.
deal.
We get to make new decisions.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That makes sense?
we gotta
Steve?
do this again.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Steve?
Yes, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he just wants to make sure that there again, they would have to come back in and apply for a license instead of just saying, I'm grandfathered in,
Yeah.
turn my sign around.
I think the other question would be, I don't know, you would have no, I don't know how much upgrading a dispensary would have. So they may not need anything, so that would be something.
Brad's got a question.
If I may, just from a legal point of view, remaining silent on the recreational would be the safest thing to protect the city. And then just some verbiage at the very end of the proposed ordinance in regards to medicinal, saying that the city of Boonville reserves any and all right to review any and all future applications, period. If you mention it, then they might try to say to slide it in, just say, city's got the right to sit back and
Right.
any future applications have to still come before us for any future licensing, existing building or new manufacturer, and then, simply limit it where there's no verbiage whatsoever to.
I think that was covered. I just don't want. it
Good
to go full
suggestion.
Cause you're gonna have to run those two businesses anyway, I would assume.
Yeah, you would think.
I just didn't know if a building, I don't know what the upgrade threshold would be if you would get a building permit for a dispensary.
Well, I mean, the way he talks about the security and
We
everything
got
else.
the thing
on
about setting
dispensaries,
hours for,
It seemed like it.
It seems
I
like.
just didn't
there
wanna,
has to be
I just didn't want that,
Dispensaries.
if we wanted,
They don't satisfy, they
I don't know that we care about any of these other ones, the hours, but you might care about the hours of dispensary.
Do we currently have any controls over the hours on liquor or anything like that?
yeah, liquor, we have control, and it's specifically called out in the constitutional amendment that the municipality can, legislate the time and manner in which these activities occur. So, in a reasonable nature. So the example that Mr. Viets gave was you couldn't say you can only operate on Saturdays from 1 to 3. That would not be a reasonable accommodation. But we don't have to give them 24 hours. So like Matt said, we could say you can only operate your dispensary Monday through Saturday, 8 to 6. That's a reasonable accommodation,
All right. So that will be in the ordinance.
if that's what you guys like.
Do we like that?
But just on dispensary, right?
Just on
Just on
dispensary.
Yeah.
Do we like that?
Yeah.
Okay.
What's alcohol currently?
You can't buy.
2?
I think it's 1/3.
What's alcohol, Bobby?
I think it's,
Obviously.
time's 1:30,
I think it, like at Walmart, Well, no,
Brad,
well,
what's,
Well, they
what's
have a
closing time on
there's different
alcohol?
licenses.
So,
right, there is, so
yeah,
it's
I was
like,
gonna use as another example when we're talking about what the state statutes say versus what ordinances regulate. An easy example is an open container ordinance. A lot of municipalities have open container ordinances where you can't have an alcoholic beverage in your hand on the street. But that's set by a city ordinance, that's not set by state statute. So what we're doing is the flip side of that is that the city can be more or less restrictive. When we talk about that 1,000-foot rule, you wanna make it a 0 setback on manufacturing and a 100-foot setback on dispensaries. They've given the cities that authority to do that. At the same time, you can also be more restrictive on hours of operation so long as it remains reasonable or just and can be argued. So the example can't be open just 1 to 3 on a Saturday. So the clearer that the city approaches the drafting of the ordinance saying these are what we can regulate, this is what we're putting in place, if we remain silent on other things, it will just default to the state statute.
So what are the hours of liquor?
I don't know, what is the hours of liquor?
So
None of us seem to
hours of
know.
liquor, like Sunday's a really good example again. Sunday through the years, if you guys remember in Boonville, you couldn't go to Price Chopper and buy your booze until after church, and then it was at 12. Now, on Sunday, it's 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. or 12 a.m., and then they have a set in the state statute, set of 7 days that you can be open on a Sunday without a liquor, and be open later. And so then normally it's 1:30 a.m. is closing time, and you can leave, there's no regular, I think it's 7 a.m. I mean, always open at 7 and third shift.
Yeah, it's early.
Monday through Saturday, I think it's 7 a.m. to 1:30 a.m. Sundays, it's 9 a.m. to 12 a.m.
Any more questions?
I was just bringing it up because it doesn't seem to be that important for alcohol that we don't even know what the hours are. I don't think people drink less because they can't buy it. Then, you know what I mean? So I don't, with this, I don't.
What you're saying, it's okay for me to have a beer at 7 o'clock in the morning?
That's up to you, yeah, I think that's part of living in America.
I thought I had to, you know, ask your choice.
For a while.
I'll disagree with you a little bit. I don't think you ought to have them be able to sell 24 hours a day.
No.
And I'll tell you why, is because you're gonna generate a lot of complaints, because people are gonna come to these places, I promise you that. So we ought to have some reasonable time. If it mirrors the alcohol, I could go with that. I don't think you should be able to go uptown and buy marijuana 24 hours a day, that's my opinion.
And I think, just again, from the legal standpoint, the safest way is if it's mirrored, a lot of the language that's been out there is if medicinal marijuana is regulated in a manner consistent with other regulated practices, i.e. the sale of alcohol, it's a safer approach for our municipality because we're not trying to test the limits one way or the other, either over-regulating or unregulating. We're saying this is a consistent regulation that the state of Missouri does. We're gonna do this, and then you come back to those site distances and
Yeah.
everything, what we're comfortable with.
That's what I'm for, just
Same as
similar to
alcohol.
alcohol.
All right, everybody?
Just 7 days a week.
Whatever alcohol is.
Well, you have to pay extra for the Sunday. 6 days a week, right? Pay extra for the Sunday?
Like, a Sunday license is a Sunday license cost is a whole separate license, both at the city level and at the state level. And then the hours of operation on Sundays are regulated in a different manner as well.
So they're the 6 days a week.
Okay. 7 a.m. to 1:30 a.m. Monday through Saturday.
And that's consistent with the standard liquor retail by the drink liquor license. at the
Yeah.
State level.
Got it, Whitney?
Yeah, I didn't know it was gonna get that complicated.
Okay, all right.
I will say, one thing also Mr. Veet said, and I'm sure everybody who's in here who's been sitting there would say that there's a lot of unknowns yet, and there's a lot of things that are yet to be defined by the courts as municipalities roll out and as businesses roll out. So this something we say may come to a change if it's deemed that either we did something good or bad one way or the other, that it may be changed. And also, I've asked Doug too, because one of our conversations at a staff level, like a tattoo parlor and a food establishment are inspected annually. So that was one thing we also thought was that maybe if we could just do from a public safety standpoint, the fire and the police chief could see, so they're making sure that there's safe precautions on an annual inspection, because I think you don't always get to all the businesses every year, right? So that we might carve out something on the business license side to do some annual inspections from a public safety standpoint, but that would not be anything that you guys would see, it would just enable us to see it.
Well, fire department's gonna be in there once a year anyway, aren't you?
No.
Not, I don't usually make it around to everybody once a
Not
year.
quite? Okay.
There's businesses come and go within a year, I never even knew they were here.
There was a guy before you. There was a guy before you who did come and visit us every year, but I think it was for the coffee, if I remember
But I
right.
don't know on the cultivation side.
Yeah, but I mean, once you get to the restale dispensary
Yeah.
side, if they have any.
Yeah, and they may be inspected by the health department too, so that's the other
Okay.
part we're trying to work out in terms of just, should the state not be as, annually inspecting and reviewing as kind of the unknown, that we would maybe have some eyes on some of that stuff as well.
All right. Any other business?
Mayor,
Susan.
I know you tabled the discussion about the street closures. I just have a broad brush comment. I think it's time that we think outside the Spring Street, Sixth Street, Chestnut box.
Yeah, exactly.
Because this is silly to keep going over this, and we have this beautiful corridor down
We do.
Spring Street that is perfect for that sort of venue, and I would encourage, whatever is worked out, that we as the council encourage,
Thank you.
consideration.
There's 3 of us now, Morris.
Good.
There's 4 of us now? All right.
There's more than that.
Ah, now there's 5 of us.
Sound like a majority.
I'm on the other side. Okay, yeah, there you go. Morris.
I got one other thing.
Yes, sir.
I think this past weekend, we got a taste of what will happen to the city of Boonville on traffic.
Oh, boy.
So, I think we need to be looking at that, but I have to comment that the police department did a great job.
Good job, Bobby.
I know that they did it on their own, but anyway, the patrolman stopped when the traffic got built up and directed traffic.
Yep.
Yeah.
So we have to commend them for,
I agree.
taking care of the city, but, we all need to be thinking about when the bridge does go under construction, we're gonna have this for a long time.
Good point. Thank you. I'm gonna ask for closure here, but I want everybody to just sit for a minute after we close the meeting, because I have a comment to make that doesn't go in the minutes. Bob, you can turn us off after we close. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second? All in favor?